This is the story of a Brazilian shoemaker. October 23rd, 1940, Três Corações, state of Minas Gerais, Brazil. A young boy was born in the young nation of Brazil, who gained its independence less than a century ago from Portugal. A footballer's son is born, and all is good with the world, but an injury ends the father's career as a professional baller. So they become poorer and poorer over time. The father, João Ramos do Nascimento, or by his footballing nickname, Dondinho, left football and had daily jobs in the city. His parents used to sell firewood. When their newborn son grew up a little bit, he started shoemaking. He would go to crowded spots with his wooden box, which he also used as a musical instrument, and cleaned and shined shoes for people in suits, or even workers. But sometimes, he would follow his mother, Celeste Arentes, to the houses of rich people to clean, cook, and simply do house stuff for that family. But sometimes, I forgot, we're talking about young Edson Arentes de Nascimento. But Celeste used to call him Dico. One of the houses had a boy, Jose, who played football. That's what Dico loved. He would ditch home and ditch work to have a kickabout with his friends and play football. That's right. Welcome to Brazil. But not yet. Because by the time Dico and company would gather to kick the leather ball, Brazil and its football connection, as we know it today, hadn't been born yet. One day, when Dico accompanied his mom to the wealthy house, he saw Jose and his friends returning home from football. They were talking about football and their favorite player. Dico was excited and shouted his favorite player, Pele. What? Who's Pele? That's Pele, Dico, said Jose. Dico's favorite footballer was Vasco da Gama's goalkeeper, Monsieur Barbosa do Nascimento, Pele, but he mispronounced it as Pele. The word didn't mean anything in the Portuguese language. It was a made-up name by Dico, which didn't end well for him. He got bullied by Jose in the neighborhood, who would make fun of him by calling him Pele. He'd hit him when Dico stood up, and other mean stuff that kids do to each other. A local tournament was about to start, and Dico and his friends signed up for it. They didn't even have shoes to play, but they beat their opponents. Jose and his team, who were called the Kings, nicknamed them the Shoeless Ones. Ironic. The Shoemakers were the only team without shoes, and they soon had the final, playing against the Kings. They couldn't tolerate the laughs, so they decided to get shoes. But how? Well, they stole peanuts and sold them at a local mall, buying shoes with the money they made. They weren't comfortable in the shoes, but decided to play with them anyway. They conceded 6 goals, so Dico took off his shoes, and everyone else followed. They found their game again. They played beautifully barefoot and scored 5. The Shoeless Ones lost the final, but no one cheered the champions because everyone was chanting, Pele, Pele, Pele. Jose was furious. He was the champion, but Dico was the hero, or as he would call him, Pele. Not only were the people cheering for Dico, but there was also a guy there from Santos FC. He gave his card to Dondinho and asked him for his son. His mother wasn't interested in her son pursuing a career in football, so they didn't call. 1950 World Cup final. Brazil versus Uruguay. Maracanã Stadium, Rio de Janeiro. More than 200,000 people went to see the game live. But 20 years after the first World Cup ever, after their first star, Uruguay beat Brazil 2-1 to mark the second star on their shirt. Dico found his father crying in the local pub, where people would sit and listen to the games via radio. Dico went to console his father and said, "Dad, I will win the World Cup for Brazil. For you, I promise." They called Santos FC. Dico went there but couldn't really fit in because he played his own kind of football. He decided to leave and return home to pick up studying. The scout found him at the station and talked to him, so Dico stayed. In the next game, he disobeyed the coach and scored a wonderful solo goal. The coach called to him and asked, "What the hell did you just do? Do it again." So Dico did, again and again and again, until it was time for Vicente Italo Fiola to gather around the squad for the national team to battle for the 1958 World Cup in Sweden. And the name was there, Edson Dico Arentes de Nascimento. Dico was going to Sweden. Before he shows up at the hotel though, his dad, Dondinho, advised him to take the name Pele and introduce himself as Pele to Brazil and to the world. And he did it. Pele said, "I thought people knew about Brazil." But when he left Brazil for the first time, which was the time he went to Sweden for the 1958 World Cup, he found out that his beloved country wasn't as known as he had imagined. The hosts were determined to keep the trophy in the country and had come up against every opponent until the final match. Pele and Brazil had the disappointment of 1950 on their mind. The semi-final had France for them. Just Fontaine, the Moroccan-born striker for the French team, had been inevitable. Up until the semis, he had scored an impressive number of 8 goals for France. That's a ratio of 2 goals per match. He was inevitable, but so was destiny. Brazil won the match 5-2 and reached the finals. The Swedish coach took a chance at the press conference to get a psychological advantage for his team. He started talking about the weaknesses of the Brazilian players and how he's going to use those disadvantages. He also mocked them and implied that they will be champions. Viola did not not like that and left the conference shouting. He spent the days leading up to the final trying to implement the Swedish tactics into his own team. But the deeper he got, the more confused his team got. Until one morning, Pele encouraged the team to have a kickabout, like they were kids, and that made them a team. So in the tactical session, Viola told the team to forget about the tactics and play the Ginga. Brazil, for the first time, champions of the world. Pele kept his promise when he was only 17. This is a historic day. In the land of Asgard, in the land where the light touches the ground, Pele sewed the first star to the golden shirt of Brazil. He had a sip of heaven. He was born as the first real star of football. The sky of the football land, that today has countless stars, was born when Pele touched the Jules Rimet Trophy. The beautiful style of football, Ginga, made people fall in love with the Selecão. Ginga was their way of playing, and people called it the Jogo Bonito. Pele won the 1962 World Cup with Brazil, but he missed most of the tournament because of an injury. That was the tournament that people remembered mostly through Garrincha. In 1966, Brazil was knocked out in the group stage by Portugal and their star Eusebio, so Pele set his eyes on 1970. His comrade, Mario Zagallo, was now the head coach of the national team. He even had to convince Pele to participate, so Pele did. Estadio Azteca, Mexico City, Mexico, was the host of the final. Brazil were in the final after taking revenge on Uruguay, and now had to play Italy, who defeated Germany in the semifinal. The game of the century. The German defender, Franz Beckenbauer, played the final minutes of that game with a dislocated shoulder. But the final wasn't as close as anyone would have thought. Brazil defeated Italy 4-1, and became champions for a record third time. Pele is now immortal. To this day, there is no one who has won the World Cup 3 times in his career. The Jules Rimet Trophy is now for Brazil forever. But I think it belongs to Pele. Pele was the first real footballer of all time. He is for sure the greatest footballer that has ever lived. Anything anyone does now in football, Pele did it first. He was the seed of the technique tree in the land of football. Technical abilities were born with him. Bicycle kick, Rabona kick, Trivela, dummy, juggling, and many more techniques. I'm sorry, every technique of the book was born when Pele did it for the first time. For a long time, he wasn't only the agent for Brazil, he was an agent for football. And he named football in the best way possible, the beautiful game. Edson Arantes do Nascimento, or as we know him, Pele.